Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the Ralph Bunche Library on a beautiful afternoon. Before we get started, please turn off your cell phones. We had a reminder this morning of how cell phones can interfere with audio. Todd, the audio technician, had turned on the audio system, and somebody walked by and used their cell phone, and it just screeched. So we don't want to have that happen. Also, it'll interfere with with the recording, the video recording. When we get to the question and answer period, please wait for the microphone to get to you. And I think that's it. My name's Hugh Howard. I'm the chief librarian here. And today we have Ann Speckhard and Mubin Shaikh, who are, as you know, are going to talk about Undercover Jihadi. Ann is part of the Foreign Service family. Her husband Dan, right, was a Foreign Service officer who ended up as an ambassador. And so Ann is very familiar with us. She spent a lot of time in this building. But even more so, she's a psychologist, and she has spent most of her career studying terrorism, internal threats, other cheery topics like the Holocaust in Belarus. She's also worked with NATO, Russia, the U.S. on terrorism and reintegrating terrorists back into society. Our second speaker, Mubin Shaikh, was born in Toronto. He attended York Memorial College, and in high school was active in the Royal Canadian Army Cadets. In 1995, he traveled to Britain, Pakistan, India, and the U.S. with an Islamic group called, I'll probably get this wrong, Tablighi Jamaat, an organization dedicated to spreading Islam. He became an undercover agent for the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and also later on the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And with that, I'm going to introduce Ann Speckhard.
Thank you. So it's so nice to be here. I've never been in the State Department Library, but when I parked in the Columbia Plaza, I thought, am I going for my med check? So it's very nice to see all of you, and thank you for organizing this. In my career, I have spoken to about 400 terrorists, well, over 400 terrorists, their family members, in the case of suicide bombers, because can't interview a dead one, you have to go to his family members, his close associates, and sometimes hostages, talk to the Beslan and Nordost hostages as well. And then I've traveled through West Bank, Gaza, Morocco, Lebanon, worked in Iraq on the detainee rehabilitation program, and lived in Europe, went through Brussels, Netherlands, UK, and talked to extremists, terrorists, you name it, and learned a lot. And then I stumbled across Mubin and ended up writing his book with him, and that's what you're going to hear about today. So we're going to hear about this book and our work together. But just briefly, I'll tell you the Toronto 18 was a motley group of young men and the women that supported them. And they were young men that were off their tracks, disillusioned, craving meaning and glory in their lives. They were frustrated by their lives, and they were also frustrated by geopolitics, foreign policy. But because of the things that they were listening to, the ideologies that they got involved in, all their anger, all their frustration about their life got channeled into a political channel and ultimately into terrorism. They were taken in by the then Al-Qaeda meme that said Islamic people, Islam, and Islamic lands are under attack by the West, and they believed it and consumed countless jihadi videos of beheadings and fighting against the West, and they were listening to Anwar al-Awlaki. So there's a number of people here. Let's see, it's hard to point over there, but on the left-hand side of the screen, you see Fahim Ahmed, and Mubin's going to tell you more about these people. But he was unemployed, married as a teenager with a baby, so a bit overwhelmed. He connected over the internet with a fellow named Abid Khan, who was a UK Pakistani national, and Abid Khan promised to put them in touch with Pakistani training camps so that they could join Al-Qaeda. So step by step over the internet, these guys radicalized and got serious. And at first they were just big talkers and trying to impress each other and impress the women that they were involved with. But over time, they took steps directly into terrorism. They got on what I call getting on the terrorism trajectory. In December 2005, Fahim organized a military-style winter training camp to select recruits, and he held a second camp in the following spring. And Mubin will tell you, when he was sent as an undercover, he got invited to the first camp, and he'll tell you a bit about that and show you a video from it. Fahim also scouted for a safe house in northern Ontario, and this safe house was to be a place where their operatives, but also worldwide international operatives, could come up into the Northwoods of Canada and hide out. The Toronto 18 had 2 members from Atlanta, and those people had scouted out buildings in Washington, D.C. that they planned to attack. And their plan was they would attack and then they would run to Canada and hide out in the safe house. And others the same thing. He arranged for his cadres to smuggle guns into the U.S. One had a pistol taped to his crotch. From the U.S. into Canada. He was caught, and he served prison time, this cadre. Fahim dreamed big. He wanted to storm Parliament Hill in Ottawa, and he wanted to take the parliamentarians hostage. And he planned to have them beheaded one by one, as he demanded that the Canadian troops withdraw from Afghanistan. He was caught due to Mubin's efforts, and he pleaded guilty in May 2010. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison. He was recently up for review, and it was refused. One of the other guys, right below him, Zachariah Amara, was also one of the leaders. He participated in the winter training camp. He captured the activities of the group on film and sent it to the Mujahideen in Pakistan, trying to create relationships and to say we're really serious. So all along, these guys were really looking for personal significance and, to be big bad guys and to connect with their supposed brothers overseas. Amara located a property in northern Ontario, the safe house. He didn't go to scout it out, but he's the one that found it and sent those to scout it out. And he got really disgusted with Ahmed. He felt that, okay, you smuggled in a few guns, but are you serious? Are you really going to make this happen? So he went ahead on his own, and he developed a plot to blow up buildings in downtown Toronto, and he picked them selectively, and Mubin can tell you a bit more about that. But these bombs that he planned to detonate, he collected fertilizer. Luckily, the CSIS and RCMP was onto him, so it wasn't possible that he could actually carry out the bombings the way he planned, but he had 3 buildings on his radar. He collected enough fertilizer, he developed a detonator, and if he hadn't been stopped, and if it had been real fertilizer that he was collecting inert material, but he didn't realize it, we would have seen 3 buildings exploded on the level of Oklahoma City in Toronto. So it would have been like another 9/11, except the Canadian version. He was pleaded guilty in October 2009, and he appealed his sentence, but he was put for life in prison. And we also see Jamal James on the right-hand side. He went to Pakistan, tried to join a training group, but didn't get in. Saeed Khalid, he's up in the corner. His mother died, and each of these people has a story behind him, kind of sad and disillusioned stories. And but anyway, they were looking for something. And here we have Anwar al-Awlaki. And Anwar al-Awlaki gave it to them via the internet. They never met him. But this is a guy that we've since droned. He's dead. But he lives on and inspires over the internet. He inspires from beyond the grave. And he has inspired so many terrorist attacks. The 2005 7/7 London bombings, those people were listening to his lectures. The Toronto 18 fed from his hand. The underwear bomber, the one that was going to explode a plane over Detroit, he was following him. The attempts on Little Rock Military Recruiting Office, the federal building in Illinois, the Times Square bomber, all of these people were listening to his tapes. And probably one of the most chilling examples that I found is Rashanara Chowdhury. She was a college student at King's College, and she started listening to Anwar al-Awlaki, listened to one of his videotapes, and decided, I like this guy. I think he's got the right version of Islam. It makes sense to me. And she went on a steady diet. And within one semester, She was the #1 person in her class. She was such a graduate. She was on a success route. Everything should have just gone sparkling for her in her career. She decided she wanted to be a martyr based on his lectures. Never met him. Totally over the internet. And she went and got 2 guns. She showed up at her parliamentarian's office and attempted to stab him to death. And when the police caught her and she was debriefed immediately, she said, I didn't mind if I died. I mean, she had totally consumed the whole idea about martyrdom, that this was her path and her destiny and really her duty as a Muslim, because that's what Anwar al-Awlaki teaches. And he's got a lecture called Constance on the Path of Jihad, and it basically teaches that it's an everlasting battle to the end times, and that every Muslim is called to be part of it, and now ISIS has totally capitalized on that, that you must come to the battleground, and if you don't, then you stay and act in place. And how is this happening? How is homegrown terrorism alive and well? So that we can see an honors student totally changing her life and being willing to become a murderer in the space of a semester, only from interacting on the internet. And the way it's happening is that these groups more and more have gotten very media savvy, very social media savvy, and they even make magazines that you can see examples of here. And it's turned into the University of Jihad, as one of my friends, Reuven Paz, who's now deceased, an Israeli researcher, had always wanted to call it, because it's all ready and available for them. And we saw with the Tsarnaevs, they followed instructions for making a bomb from what they found in the open source materials from the Inspire magazine, the pressure cooker bomb. And, you see this, make a bomb in the kitchen of your mom. That's where it came from. And after I made my interviews of 400 or more terrorists, I always said the lethal cocktail of terrorism is 4 things. It's a group, it's social support that you get on some level, it's an ideology that convinces you that the group, its willingness to use terrorism is justified. Never is, but they argue that it is. And then the 4th thing, the vulnerabilities of the individual. And what we're finding right now is that the ideology is all over the internet and the social support is over the internet. So let's say you're a Tsarnaev in Boston or a Rosh Hashanah Chaudhry in London. Maybe you don't feel any social support in your family or your peer group or whoever you're interacting with. You can find it on the internet. And in the case of the Toronto 18, they found each other, and they built their group bigger, as Mubin will tell you. So right now we also have ISIS, who's declared their caliphate and is using a lot of things from Islamic scriptures to resonate with people that this is the correct ideology. And the conflicts in Syria and Iraq have drawn an estimated 15,000 radicals from more than 80 nations to fight for ISIS and other groups. And according to Peter Newman in London of the ICSR, he says that 20 to 25% of these are from Western countries. That includes the U.S., Canada. Canada's got a really bad problem with this. Mubin was telling me that there are 10 that were stopped this morning from traveling. Western Europe and Australia. Australia also has a big problem with this. And 80% of these foreign fighters end up with ISIS. And unlike Al-Qaeda, you don't have to go through this whole vetting process. You don't have to get to really know somebody in your community. They decide to trust you. You raise the funds. You go off to Pakistan. You wait. Maybe you get into the training camp. Maybe you don't. And along each one of these steps is the possibility of arrest. No, you just get a plane ticket. You fly to Turkey. You get over to Syria and Iraq. And you're accepted. You're welcomed. And, if they decide maybe they don't trust you, well, then they say, you take the next suicide mission, and that ends the trust issue, right? No problems anymore. So, anyway, we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with these people? Because we don't know who's going and who's not going. Maybe they just went to Turkey for a vacation. And can we track everybody that goes to Turkey? Or can we track everybody that flies over via Western Europe? We had a woman that, a journalist who posed on the internet. She pretended to be an ISIS supporter and a teenager. And over time, a very short time actually, when she was liking ISIS and connecting with other people over Twitter and Facebook, suddenly she gets a message from one of the ISIS fighters that's like, have you heard of me? I'm Mr. Tough Guy so-and-so, and surely you know who I am, and you must really want to know me better. And so she contacted the authorities and said, I didn't really expect my research to lead to this, but look what I've brought in, what I've reeled in. And the authorities worked with her, and they said the ISIS guy is telling you about battles. He's telling you credible things. We think he's for real. And she eventually agreed to Skype with him over the internet, and she said she was worried she wasn't going to pass as a teenager, but she didn't wear any makeup. She put a headscarf on and pretended to be a teenager instead of, I think she was 27, 28, I'm not sure. But anyway, he proposed marriage to her, and he told her to come, and she was so curious because he said he was sending a woman to meet her in Turkey. She was so curious that she said, okay, I'll come. And he arranged for her travel, but he told her, don't travel from Paris, go through Amsterdam, because, they're kind of figuring out where the high surveillance is. But how do our security services have any idea that a woman in Paris is interacting with a guy in ISIS and, getting love-struck and crazy and eating this ideology? And you know what we'll do when we're in love? All of us, we get a little crazy, right? And anyway, so she went off to Amsterdam and was going to fly, and he told her, ditch your phone, buy a new phone, then call this number. So they've got all the OPSEC. They know what they're doing. And we've seen many people go. But the question is now, what about when they come back? What do we do? Are we going to set up de-radicalization programs? Are we going to rehabilitate them in prison? We tried that in Iraq. And I think it can be done. But in the U.S., we have a huge prison problem already. And are we rehabilitating people that get thrown in prison for, smoking some weed? And where's the fairness? If you join terrorism, we're going to suddenly put you into a really big-time program. And if you smoke weed and get thrown in the clink, sorry, too bad. We have to think that through. But if we don't de-radicalize and we put serious extremists into the prison, then are they going to seed out? And is there going to be more and more growing? And also, do we even know who they are? Are these people that have weapons training and that can come in under the radar? Because we don't know. So this is a really big problem, and every country is deciding their own way to deal with it. Denmark's been pretty forgiving and trying to deal with people, although they had somebody already rejoin. And, some places are saying, if we find out you go, we burn your passport for you. You don't have to burn it over there. We'll burn it. And it's a problem. So I'm trying to go fast, so I leave a lot of time for Mubin. The ISIS meme has built on the Al-Qaeda meme, and Jessica Stern in her foreword to our book, which we're very grateful to, references the spread of bad ideas, and that's exactly what it is. But these bad ideas are being spread via social media, and they're using things like Call of Duty. I don't even remember these programs because I'm not a teenager. The one with traffic, what is the one with the... Grand Theft Auto, thank you very much. And anyway, it's very destructive, and it's catching kids where they live, how they think. And anyway, the idea is to tell people you can come and live in an Islamic state. You can come and build a caliphate. You are needed. If you are Muslim, you are part of this, which of course is not true, but that's what they claim. And you can become pure. If anything has sullied your life, you can come here and purify, and you will live under Islamic ideals. You'll live in utopia. And when we're young, we believe that stuff. When we're more our age, we're a little bit more cynical about it. But when you're young, you can be brought into something like that. And then if you're angry about politics, if you've been watching the things that's going on, like in Iraq, for instance, we know that Sunni women were imprisoned, probably just picked up off of street sweeps and so on, and raped in prison by Shia. So if you've been watching that and you're angry, a lot of people ask me, well, don't they see the violence of ISIS? Yes, they do. But they also see the violence that came before it. They see the death squads, they see the tortures, they see the sectarian violence, and they're angry about it. So they don't feel like the violence is completely isolated and just happening out of nowhere. And then probably the scariest thing is that ISIS is encouraging make hijra, come and join us, become part of the caliphate, be part of the end times, bring it in with us. But if you can't come, stay and act in place. And the idea is to catch the disillusioned, mentally ill or fine, Please join us. The marginalized, the frustrated, the discriminated against, those who long for belonging, identity, meaning, adventure, recognition, those who want to bolster their sense of womanhood or manhood. Join us. Instantly, you can join us. You can be part of us. You're part of a grand design for utopia. And if you can't make it over here, you can certainly mount an attack at home. And that is exactly what we saw when we put our book out. Mubin and I called each other the day we put our book out. We were in total shock because there was a guy that had been inspired by ISIS that took a rifle, went to the Ottawa Parliament, and tried to shoot up as many parliamentarians as he could. And we were like, how did that happen? I mean, that was the plot of the Toronto 18. But you see, they keep trying, and these ideas are out there. And they can take somebody that's unstable, and guns are readily available in many countries, certainly in ours, and, boom, you've got an attack. And he wasn't particularly able, but he tried. So we know that the Toronto 18 plotted to blow up 3 buildings around Toronto. They planned to attack their parliament and to behead their prime minister and their parliamentarians. And thankfully, because of Mubin, this didn't happen. You see Mubin up in the corner, and you're going to hear more from him. And I consider Mubin a hero. And I'm so happy to be able to introduce him, and I hope you read our book. And I hope that you'll give him a handshake and a pat on the back because he's an amazing person. I just had an Israeli colleague read the book, and he's like, how come he doesn't have a medal? And he does deserve a medal, and he deserves all of our thanks for having the courage, because he himself got mixed up in this terrible thought process, but he walked away from it, and then not only that, was willing to go back in. And he was told by his country, go into witness protection, take your whole family, disappear now that you've done this. And he hasn't disappeared. He's here talking to you. He's talking to the world and saying, this is wrong, these people are killers, this isn't Islam. And, every day, he's putting himself and his family in harm's way, willing to take those risks to fight against this. And for me, that's a hero. So, Mubin. And that's all our books.
I didn't even have to pay her to say all that. Okay, so thank you very much for having me today. It's always a pleasure to visit the U.S., D.C., of course. It's just a little bit colder up in Toronto, so it felt like September in the morning. I think you guys call that a cool breeze up here, but yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I split my talk into two parts. One is the Toronto aspect of it, and the other I'm gonna give you is the lowdown on Syria foreign fighters, especially ISIS, on Twitter. And what I've been doing is, the case. I'll explain a little bit, of course, my history, but after I was done with the case, I got on Twitter, and in the beginning I thought I would do my PhD research based on my interactions with them, but the University of Liverpool said, nah, you can't do that. So I ended up interacting with a lot of these foreign fighters, ISIS, Al-Qaeda's affiliate called Jabhat al-Nusra, and I've had conversations with them, many of them, some of whom are dead, some of whom are still alive and are still tweeting back and forth. So I'm going to show you some of the screen grabs that I've taken with my interactions with them. So you've obviously seen that, right? What I'm going to do first is I'm going to give you a very quick, short, simple, linear, progressive model from radicalization into violent extremism. Clarifying terms, radicalization is a process whereby an individual comes to take on views where you can use violence to attain political goals. And once you come to take those views, you are an extremist. And when you act on those views, you're a violent extremist, okay? So most people, when you start off in life, you're growing up, this is an age-old debate in psychology, nature versus nurture, right? Your parents teach you your cultural values, your society teaches you values. You develop an identity as you go through life, but certain things start to really stand out for you. And it could be drawn on geopolitical lines. It could be you're deprived. You live in a place that's been bombed. Somebody's responsible for that. You're angry, of course. You're frustrated. Deprivation arguments. Conflicts over meaning and identity, of course. Adventure. young kids, I mean, young males especially, if there's anything that they're really inclined towards, it's adventure. And money for some people. It really does come down to that. And most people, they spend their lives doing this, you know, expressing themselves as individuals or as a part of a group. And radicals and radicalization, the overwhelming majority of radicals don't become violent extremists. They actually just stop here. Either they'll just continue and remain in a status quo, or either become disillusioned, mature, get bored, get a better job, and just drop off. And why I put group and dynamics is because we know from psychology that, you know, you're more likely to do something when you're part of a group than when you're with an individual. Think back to when you were 15, 16 and you were going out with your friends, and you do things. It's the pack mentality. You feel strength in that. It's your tribe. There's protection. So all these things play a role, of course, in how you start to behave, how you think even. But finally, on the third category, you start to see these things really stand out with violent extremism.